Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Heroes Return era of Marvel Comics, I kind of want to switch over to Thor. And the reason why, because we don't usually sit down and cover a lot of different Thor stories on my channel. And I kind of feel like this is the perfect time to do that since we already covered the Avengers, Fantastic Four. So why not sit down and cover Thor in the Heroes Return era of Marvel Comics? Now, just in case we have anybody just jumping into the middle of our coverage of this series or other series we are covering when it comes to the Heroes Return era of Marvel Comics, Heroes Return came out of Heroes Reborn. You see, the late 1990s for Marvel Comics, they had a few properties that were no longer selling. And so what Marvel did was they canceled all those books that weren't selling anymore and pushed those characters into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. Now, when it came to Heroes Reborn, what Marvel did was they brought in old creators that fans loved in the past and hoping those old creators would be able to bring some life back into those characters, but to also bring fans back into comics. Now, the whole idea of Heroes Reborn only lasted for like a year, and that was really it. Right after that, you basically then had Marvel cancel Heroes Reborn and had those characters go back into the main Marvel universe. And so with that happening, you now have Heroes Return. Heroes Return is the current era we're covering on the channel with the idea of the Avengers, Fantastic Four, Thor, and I want to say Iron Man as well, and also Captain America. They all enter the Heroes Return era. Now, we already covered some Avengers storylines, and when it came to the Avengers series, we had discovered for Thor that Asgard is currently gone at the moment. And so with the idea of Asgard no longer being around at the moment, it's really more of Thor just trying to figure out what happened to Asgard while he was gone. But on top of that, what happened to all the different people who were living in Asgard? And the reason why I'm bringing that up now, because as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, you do have Thor right now arriving to a scene of a crime where there's someone right now holding a few people hostage at the moment. And the reason why, because the guy believes that he is a god supposedly from Asgard and he wants to talk to Thor. It's when Thor arrives. At first, for Thor, he believes the guy is lying. But at the same time, for Thor, he has no clue what happened to the people of Asgard while he was gone in Heroes Reborn. And so for him, he wants to see if the guy is telling the truth. Now, on top of that, we're also being introduced to another character known as Jake Olsen. Now, for Jake, he is a paramedic. And matter of fact, he does play a major role in the first story arc that we are covering here on the channel for the 1998 series for Thor. And so you have Thor try to go inside and handle this situation. Now, once the guy does be confronted by Thor, he tells Thor that he is Heimdall. And as we all know, Heimdall's a guy who basically protects the Bifrost. But for Thor being confronted by a guy who believes he's Heimdall, at first, for Thor, he wants to believe that he is lying. But at the same time, for Thor, with Asgard being wrecked and Asgardians missing left and right, he wants to hear out what the guy is actually saying. And the guy says Loki had put him in his human body as a host to use for the moment. But in reality, it's really him, Heimdall. And so for Thor, he's kind of like, okay, if that's truly the case, then you must come with me to make sure that you truly are the man you say you are. Now we have to switch over to the docks, and the reason why, because we do pick up with some military guys right now just offloading a large container off this boat. Now, when it comes to Colonel Preston Case, he oversees the offloading, but he was told to not touch it with a Class A protection. The problem is that the Colonel does not listen. And so when he does touch it, of course, it explodes. And so we're kind of left to wonder what in the world just popped out of that actual case. I kind of want to switch back over to Jake Olsen. And the reason why, because for Jake Olsen, like I said, he does play a major role in this storyline. But for Jake right now, we currently see him being a paramedic, believing that his shift is over. But with the explosion happening down the docks, unfortunately, he got to do some overtime. And so it's him kind of feeling upset about the idea that he won't be able to get home in time to see his wife Hannah for their date. Now, also, for a brief moment, we do shift over to, well, Hel. Hel for the Asgardians, who's currently being controlled by Hela. Now, when it comes to Hela, it's her being confronted by Vala. A lot of us here right now. And for Vala, what she does is inform Hela with this prophecy that Thor will sooner or later be in hell with them. And so we kind of get the idea of the story. We might see Thor actually die in this storyline, but we do shift back over to Thor. And we see that for Thor, yes, he did take the imposter of Heimdall over to Asgard. And when they do arrive for the imposter, it hits them all at once to kind of bring out the truth that no, he is not Heimdall at all. But you also have Thor get very upset because for Thor, even though he knew that the guy was lying, it was also Thor kind of hoping that there's a possibility the guy was telling the truth here. Like he was Heimdall just put in a body thanks to Loki, because for Thor, he is officially lonely. Yes, we get the idea he does have the Avengers, but for the Avengers, that's his Midgard family. But his Asgardian family is missing. His father, his brother, his mother, his friends, his lovers, they're all gone at the moment. And so for Thor, it's him officially feeling alone at the moment. And once you do have Thor find an arrow, he gets this small flashback to his early days, hanging out with Loki and hanging out with Sif, trying to impress her as well. But again, in reality right now for Thor, he's lonely. And so with this imposter finally telling the truth, you didn't have Thor say, fine, it's now time for us to go ahead and go back home. You do need some medical help though. We also see that right after you have Thor leave, with Thor being so upset, he kind of did get a little angry and threw his hammer and kind of destroy a few things in Asgard. But with him doing that, apparently he had freed some prisoner. And the question is right now, who is this prisoner that Thor had just freed? Now, as we do shift back over to Jake Olsen, it's really more of Marvel trying to build up the idea that this guy will become very important for the overall storyline. And the reason why, because we're also introduced to a few other characters that are close to him. Like, for example, his fiance, better known as Hannah, and also her daughter, better known as Amanda. We also learned that for Hannah and Jake, they're supposed to get married very soon. But also, when it comes to Amanda, Hannah's daughter, well, Amanda does not really like Jake at all and kind of feels like her mother could do better. Now, you do have the book shift back over to Thor and kind of use Thor to reintroduce another character, and that would be Jane Foster, one of the many lovers of Thor over the years. But for Jane Foster, at this point in time, she's now a doctor at a hospital. And so for Thor, this is perfect. And the reason why, because, well, the guy who believed to be Heimdall does need some medical help at the moment. But you didn't have Jane inform Thor about what's happening at the docks, that apparently things are popping off left and right, and the Avengers are already there at the moment. And so once you do have Thor arrive at the docks, he sees the Avengers at the moment right now just trying to help out the innocent people who are truly being affected by the explosion from earlier. But we also learned that inside the container earlier was the Destroyer armor. Now, of course, the Destroyer armor was created by Odin as a way to fight against the Celestials. And when it came to pressing Case, the Colonel from earlier, when he had touched the case, that enchanted armor went on to him. And so currently right now, it's just him just going on a rampage. And the reason why, because it's him expressing his anger with the idea of being in the army. And so with him doing that, he's just going ham in the entire area. And you do have the Avengers there as well, trying their best to, take it down. What the problem is, this creation was made to fight against the Celestials. And so unfortunately for our heroes, it's not really an easy task when it comes to bringing it down. Now, Jake is also there as well. And when it comes to Jake, it's him right now just trying his best to help out innocent people who are being affected by this battle between the Avengers and also the Destroyer. Now, there is this one person who's currently trapped. And while you do have Jake try his best to free that person, there's gasoline everywhere. As we all know, as soon as gasoline is lit up, it's going to cause an explosion nearby. And so for Jake, he's trying his best to get away. And so with that happening, you didn't have Thor realizing the Avengers might not win the battle. And so for Thor, what he wants to do is use all the power he has for one final strike against the Destroyer to hopefully bring down Preston Case. The problem is that when Thor does that, he does cause a small explosion. Of course, the gasoline lights on fire, causing more explosions, and of course hitting Jake as well. And so for Jake, even though he was able to save that innocent person, he was badly burned. And so we're already seeing here that Jake is going to die. And it's pretty sad. But the thing is, for Jake, his life is not done just yet. But with Thor believing that he had finally won, you see the Destroyer just get right back up again, showing that what Thor did earlier didn't work at all. And you didn't have the Destroyer just go out of its way to beat down on Thor, to the point where we literally see the depth of Thor here, it seems like, because he's badly beaten. Like, it does seem like he's on the verge of death as the first chapter closes. And so as we dive into the next chapter, it's really more of us now seeing the Avengers truly being upset about the idea of the death of Thor. And so with Thor possibly being dead, you have the Avengers just wanting to try their best to bring down this enchanted armor that has killed one of their closest friends. Now, of course, for the Avengers, they're not really able to do it, but you had a Scarlet Witch disappear. And the reason why, you had a Scarlet Witch just trying her best to use her magic as a way to heal up the body of Thor, to possibly bring him back to life. But the thing is, the Destroyer was able to take down the rest of the Avengers and shift its focus over to the Scarlet Witch. And so, of course, she does get hit while trying to heal up Thor. Now, Thor's body falls into the body of water. And of course, as he falls down, it does seem like his soul is beginning the process of leaving his body. And so with the soul of Thor leaving, you had a soul of Thor go into, well, hell. Now, with him being in hell, he's then confronted by Hela, who believes that for once she was able to claim the soul of Thor once and for all for her own. But the thing is, while you have the two characters talking to one another, they're then confronted by Marnot. Now, Marnot is a brand new character. And for Marnot, what he's doing right now is here to make a deal with Thor. And the reason why, because for Thor, earlier, as we saw him use his powers against the Destroyer to hopefully bring it down, but he failed, he also killed off Jake Olsen. And so right now for Marnot, he's saying, listen, Thor, I think you and I should talk. Like, I can save your life, but you have to atone for what you did to Jake Olsen. Because remember, you use all your power as a way to bring down that powerful enchanted armor, which you almost did, but you failed. But you also killed somebody else. So it's Thor finding out what he did to Jake. And it's Marnot saying, like, listen, you have to pay for what you have done to Jake while you're trying to bring down that being. Now, here's the thing, because while you have Marnot explaining things to Thor, you have Demetrius telling Hannah, the fiance of Jake, that, yeah, your fiance died while out there being a paramedic. Like, unfortunately, he is gone. And for her, she already lost one man. So now there's another. It's just so heartbreaking. Now, this right here is really important when it comes to the overall run of this series right here for Thor, because it's the idea that now you have Marnot telling Thor, you now have to live out the life of Jake because you killed him. I can't bring him back to life, but I can bring you back to life. And the reason why, because your soul is not completely in hell just yet. Part of your soul is still in the body that's currently in the world of the living. And so it's him saying, like, I can bring you back to life and help you escape hell, but at the same time, you gotta do what I tell you to do, which is atone for the death of Jake, that the man you had killed. And so you do have Marnot being able to bring Thor back to life. And with Thor being back to life again, you now have Thor being able to fight against the Destroyer. It's really more of us seeing Thor being able to just fight against this guy, but he remembers that he can't bring it down, this enchanted armor. And so what you have Thor do next is send it away. He opens up a portal to say, you know what, go to a far away planet. Just give me a break. But after doing that, you then have Thor leave, because again, for Thor, he was just told, you have to atone for the death of Jake. You have to live out his life. And so when you do have Thor arrive at the apartment of Jake, it's a major deal. And the reason why, because when he does arrive there and now in the form of Jake, he's then confronted by Hannah, Jake's fiance. And she was just told by Demetrius, Jake's co-worker, Jake's best friend, that Jake died. And so now she's very confused about the idea that her fiance is alive again, standing right in front of her. But on top of that, for Thor, he doesn't have access to Jake's past. And so as we dive into the third chapter, with Thor not really having access to Jake's past, he has no idea who Hannah is. He has no idea that she has a daughter. He has no idea that, hey, that's Jake's fiance. Like, it's him getting a crash course on Jake's past all at once. And so for Thor here, he begins to freak out because he has to live a life as Jake. But the problem is he can't really do that if he doesn't know anything about Jake and the people around Jake. And when it comes to Marnot, he kind of made sure to not give Thor access to the past of Jake. But at the same time, it was Marnot saying, I can't bring Jake back to life. Like, he died. The only reason why I brought you back to life, because part of your soul was still in your body. And so with that part of your soul being in your body still, I was able to bring you back to life, but force you to atone for the death of Jake, the man you had killed. And so right now, when you do have Hannah leave, but also reminding Jake, aka Thor here, to pick up her daughter, he's kind of like, okay, first off, I'm engaged. That's Hannah. She's a daughter named Amanda, and apparently she's at school right now, and I got to pick her up. Like, this is a lot all at once. Now, the second half of this story really does focus on a different enemy, and I'm kind of sad because I just found out that this character only appeared in this storyline, and that's really it. And that would be Sedna. Now, for Sedna, she belongs to the northern gods, or better known as the Inuit gods, that are usually worshipped by the Inuit and the Yupik cultures in the northern region of the world, so like Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and Siberia. But either way, she is a sea goddess to that culture there. And so for her right now, she finds this vessel that was basically used by Thor in his good old days. And so once she does find it and find the jewels, she wants to use the jewels to find its original owner. And of course, that owner will be Thor. Now, you do have Hannah go pay Demetrius a visit. And the reason why, because she wants to inform to Demetrius that, you know, her fiance is not dead. It was him who told her, like, hey, Jake is dead. But it's her telling him, like, no, I just saw Jake. He's alive. And so for Demetrius, he's kind of like, dang, I was really hoping that Jake was dead. And the reason why, because for Demetrius, he was trying to pin something on Jake. We don't know what just yet, but apparently something pretty bad. So once we do shift back over to Thor, is Thor right now being confronted by Marnot. Now, for Marnot being there, he's kind of like, hey, don't forget, we made a deal. We made a pact that you have to live out the life of, well, Jake here. So unfortunately, get to it. Now, for Thor, he wants to know, like, one, where is my body? But two, if I have my body inside of Jake's body, then how do I transform to Thor when people are in danger? But for Marnot, he's not really trying to give Thor any piece of information that could possibly help him. And matter of fact, is Marnot saying like, when I do appear to talk to you, make sure you act normal because you're the only person right now who can see me. And right now, the folks around you, they kind of believe that you're a bit crazy at the moment. Right after you have Marnot leave, you then have Sedna appear. Now, for Sedna appearing here, she's right now trying to find the owner of the jewels. Of course, that would be Thor. The problem is that right now, the person she sees is not Thor, it's Jake. And so for Jake here, who's right now trying so hard to concentrate so that he'll then be able to transform to Thor, at first, it doesn't work. And the thing is, for Sedna, she's kind of going a little wild at the moment. But you didn't have Thor being able to transform. And so once he's now Thor, he's now able to go toe-to-toe with Sedna here. And this kind of leads into the ending of this chapter alone because you do have Thor try his best to fight against Sedna. The problem is that once she does call in her sea creature and you have Thor try to use his hammer as a way to bring down the sea creature, as the creature does swallow his hammer, you then have Sedna being able to wrap up Thor in like all these different, I don't want to call them actually, but she basically has Thor wrapped up and she begins to pull underneath underwater. Now for Thor, he realized that he's unable to call his hammer, and with him not really being able to call his hammer, he begins to transform back into Jake. But for Sedna here, what she wants to do is make Thor her lover, but also make the sea his permanent home. Meaning like her goal is to bring him so deep in the water that he might die. And with the idea of him turning back to Jake, there's a possibility he could die. But as we enter the fourth and final chapter of the storyline, we do pick up with the dark gods, like for example, Pericus and also Adva. Now for Pericus, he was a prisoner of Asgard, and matter of fact, he was locked up. But when it came to Thor, Thor had released him when Thor was sad at the very beginning of this storyline. And so when Thor was hammering the story a building or two, it also released Pericus. And so now their goal is to go after, well, Thor. Now, getting back over to Thor, you have Thor right now at the moment turning into Jake. In matter of fact, at the very last second, he is saved by Namor. By the time Namor gets there, Thor had disappeared. So all he saw was Jake just drowning in the water being pulled down by Sedna. And when it comes to Sedna, well, she's wondering where in the world Thor has gone to because she didn't realize that Thor had disappeared and now Jake had arrived. And so it's now her attacking Namor. And I kind of like this a lot because for Sedna, she believes that she is the ruler of the water, the ruler of the oceans. But for Namor, he's kind of like, no, I am the king of the ocean. And let me show you what I mean by that. Now, she also tries to use her creatures against Namor as well. And he does have a bit struggle here. But getting over to the support characters of Jake, you have Hannah right now calling up Demetrius. And the reason why, because again, Jake was supposed to pick up Amanda, her daughter, from school. But he's not back yet, nor is her daughter. And so it's her right now asking Demetrius to, check in on her daughter at the school. We also see that Demetrius does deal, some drugs on the side, apparently. But getting back over to Namor and also Thor, you do have the two characters being able to work together. And with the two characters being able to work together, they are able to bring down the creature because you didn't have Thor being able to call his hammer back. And with his hammer being called back to him, just like that, he transformed back to Thor and being able to help Namor bring down the creature. Now for Sedna, she still wants Thor as a lover, but you have Namor step in. And Namor says you can't fall for it, Thor, because for Sedna, what she does is a siren-like song as a way to hypnotize men and to pull them to the bottom of the ocean where they're never seen again. And so that was her goal for Thor there at the moment. Now, for Namor, he does tick her off because he revealed what she wanted to do. And so with him doing that, she just leaves. Now, right after she does leave, you did have the two characters go their separate ways. Because for Namor, he has to deal with some Atlantis problems. Now, once you do have Thor get back home, or really more Jake's apartment, he's then confronted by Hannah and also, well, Demetrius and Amanda. And for Hannah, she's very upset with Jake because she doesn't know that this is Thor, but also he did promise that he'll pick up her daughter, at school. And the thing is, he didn't do that. And so Amanda was confronted by some thugs, but luckily for Amanda, Demetrius got her. And so for Jake here, really Thor, he walks away because he hates the idea that he was forced to live this life, but he also hates the idea of pretending to be somebody's loved one. And so he flies away. By the time Hannah gets to the rooftop, she does not see Thor flying away and kind of wondering what happened to Jake. And so to close on this video, we begin to kind of get some answers on what happened to Asgard, what happened to Odin, because we do switch over to the home of the dark gods. And when we do, we get our introduction of Majestin Zelia, the one in charge of all the dark gods. But on top of that is her right now trying to gather resources from Asgard to bring over to their dimension. But on top of that as well, she's holding on to Odin as a prisoner. And so we're kind of left to wonder where in the world this story could possibly go. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.